Now that we've gone through species counterpoint from 2 to 4 parts, it's time to move on. Species counterpoint is really a kind of preparation for real-life counterpoint, building up fluency in a way that's pedagogically well-structured. But it isn't the final goal, just a step along the way. Among the things that species counterpoint does not address are essentials like modulation, motives, rests, and instrumental counterpoint, not to mention counterpoint and other harmonic styles, and how to use counterpoint in composition outside of the contrapuntal forms like fugue, canon, etc. In this lesson, we will realize our last species counterpoint exercises and then discard whole note canti. Counterpoint where all the parts are moving is much more common than counterpoint based on long note canti, and it will serve to begin our voyage into the areas mentioned above. The student should finish species work with exercises where 2 and then 3 of the added parts are in 5th species. Here's an example of the latter. This is a standard 4-part species exercise with the cantus and the bass. There's nothing very surprising here. As usual, the peaks are independent, the rhythmic momentum in quarter notes is maintained to the end, and the harmony is rich when several parts are moving in quarter notes at the same time. Now something different. Here, the top 3 parts are identical to the previous example, but the bass is different. In fact, the bass here is just an ornamented version of the original cantus. What I've done here is to follow the contour of the cantus, but filling in the spaces between the first beats in the style of 5th species. One detail we wouldn't usually find in species counterpoint is the tritone leap in measure 4 in the bass. In harmony, this leap is quite common, and here it also works well since it's resolved by the B in the next bar. Also, the F sharp in the bass makes the momentary 7th chord with the other parts, also correctly resolved, adding richness to the overall harmony. But if the bass went somewhere other than the following B, the line would be less convincing. Once all the parts are moving at the same time, there's no special reason to keep the harmonic rhythm at 1 chord per bar. And indeed, measures 2, 4, 5, 6, and 7 all imply other chords momentarily in mid-bar. Often they're just passing or neighboring 7th chords, for example in measure 5 on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th beats. Again, they enrich the texture. Once again, if all the parts are moving, aim for this kind of richness instead of just letting the dissonances bump into each other in random fashion. Now a different approach to the same situation. Here's a cantus, but in florid, 5th species style. Note that this new cantus also includes a bit of chromaticism, the E flat D C sharp in measures 5 and 6. Here's a possible solution. Of course, there are also many others. Apart from the fact that all 4 parts are moving, there are some other differences between this realization and the species counterpoint exercises we've done up till now. Specifically, first, the harmonic rhythm is much more fluid given such an active bass line. Second, the harmony is even richer, for example measure 3 and 4, which tonicize B flat major, and the Neapolitan chord in measure 5, as well as the 5-6-5 of 5 in measure 8. These things are possible because we're no longer constrained by a completely diatonic cantus firmus. 3. The suspension in measure 6, the 7th, resolves in the 2nd beat. Since the harmonic rhythm is much more active here, no longer limited to 1 chord per bar, it doesn't sound syncopated or out of place. And finally, number 4, some kinds of harmonic richness arise from ambiguity. For example, in measure 6, on the third beat, we have what looks like a 6/4 chord. But that arises from the E passing tone in the alto voice, and by the time we've reached the fourth beat, it's clear that the harmony is really a 4/6/5. This brings up an important point. When all the parts are moving and include various kinds of dissonance, it's important that the harmonies sound clear and well directed. In other words, if we put together all the cues being sent to the listener, the result makes harmonic sense, even though one or more local details might seem unusual. In this case, the listener puts together the B natural, the bass, the leap to G in the soprano, which implies that it's a chord tone, and the sonority in the fourth beat, which adds up to a 4/6/5, correctly resolved. All these things militate against interpreting the chord on the third beat as an E minor 6/4. On the other hand, we also see many things here that we've already learned from species counterpoint. For example, the idea that when several parts are moving together, it's a good idea to have the intervals between them include a lot of thirds and sixths, and the idea that the lines do not all peak at the same time. And the general ease in combining lines could only be the result of lots of practice in simpler situations, which is exactly what species counterpoint is designed to provide. Now a modulating example. Here's the given part in the alto. How would we go about approaching this? The first step is to roughly work out the cadence and the modulation, since these are the places where we have the least room to maneuver. Then look for opportunities for suspensions in the cantus and other parts. After that, we can fill in the harmony a bit in these places. Let's see what we have up to now. Most of the bass here is already worked out, as is the final cadence. The bass line is essential to settle very early on since it controls the harmony of all the parts. Without a clearly directed bass line, the modulation and the cadence can't make sense. The new key arrives at the end of measure 6, so it's important not to sound the B natural in the preceding chord on the first beat. Notice the many suspensions in measures 2, 5, 6, and 8. The occasional other notes that have been added are to enrich the harmony during the suspension's resolutions. For example, the tenor C sharp in measure 2, the tenor E in measure 5, and the upper parts in measure 7 and 8. Here's a full solution based on the above sketch. Notice that a few details have been changed to make the lines more fluid. The voice crossing in measure 6 between alto and tenor is not a problem. The seventh in the alto resolves as expected. In fact, the tenor in measure 6 could just have a half note, G, on the third beat, but the leap to the C improves the line. In the link below this video, you will find a few given florid lines to compose four-part textures like this one. Remember, aim for clear harmony and a well-directed bass line. This is where previous solid harmony training is essential, and it will become more and more necessary from now on. 2. Use suspensions to enrich the texture. 3. When two lines are moving together, try to make them rich with each other. 4. Sing and play.